My name is Dela Ankra. I am 36 years old, and on a Thursday morning, I woke up in a hospital bed after 5 days unconscious, and a nurse told me I had been asking for someone called Lena. Every day, sometimes several times a day. Lena, Lena, where is Lena? Is Lena coming? The nurse said it gently. She said it in the way you say something to a patient that you are not certain they will be ready to hear. She said it because they had tried to find Alina, had looked through my phone, my emergency contacts, my admission information, and had found no one by that name. And they wanted to know, when I was ready, whether I could help them understand who I had been asking for. I looked at her. I said the name back to myself silently. Lena. And something happened inside me that I do not have precise language for. Not a memory, not an image, something older than memory. Something that lived below the level where memories are stored and retrieved. Something that recognized the name before my mind had caught up with the recognition. I said, I don't know anyone called Lena. And I started to cry. Not because I was upset by the nurse's question, because the name had done something to me that I had not been prepared for, because somewhere below everything I consciously knew, I did know Lena. I had known her for 27 years.
Let me tell you how I came to be in that hospital bed. I am an accountant. I work for a mid-sized firm in Bristol. I had been working late on a Thursday evening, 6 days before I woke up. A deadline, a client audit that had required 3 consecutive late nights. I had been tired in the way that builds rather than arrives, the kind of tired that accumulates without you noticing until it becomes something the body has to address without your permission. I had collapsed in the office kitchen. My colleague Patience had found me. She had called the ambulance. She had ridden with me to the hospital because she had not wanted me to be alone, which is the kind of person Patience is and has always been. The doctors had identified a neurological event, not a stroke, a complex migraine variant with prolonged loss of consciousness. Rare, but not dangerous in the long term. I would recover fully. I was already recovering. But for 5 days, my body had been somewhere my mind was not, and in that somewhere, my mind had been looking for Lena. My sister Rakia arrived on Thursday afternoon. She had been at the hospital since the collapse, but had been told by the doctors to go home and rest on Wednesday evening and had complied reluctantly, and had come back the moment visiting hours opened on Thursday. She came in and she held my hands, and she looked at me with the expression of someone who has spent 5 days being frightened and is now translating that fear into practical energy. She asked how I was feeling. I told her I was present and confused, and that my head ached, and that a nurse had told me something I needed to talk to her about. I said, while I was unconscious, I was asking for someone called Lena. Rakia's expression did something I was not expecting. It did not look confused. It looked like a door opening onto something that had been closed for a long time. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, Dela, do you remember Lena Sey? I said the name back slowly. Lena Sey. And the thing that had happened when the nurse said the name happened again, larger this time. A recognition that rose from somewhere deep and arrived in my chest before it arrived in my mind. I said, I don't think. Rakia said, you were 9. She was your best friend. She died in a road accident the summer before we started secondary school.
The object at the center of everything was a photograph. Rakia brought it 2 days after I woke up. She had gone home on Thursday evening and had searched through the boxes in the attic, where my mother kept the things that had been too hard to throw away and too hard to look at. She had found the photograph in a plastic sleeve inside a cardboard box that had not been opened in many years. 2 girls, 9 years old, standing in a garden. One of them, me, I recognized myself in the way you recognize yourself in very old photographs, not by the face exactly, but by the posture, the tilt of the head, something in the way you were already standing in the world. The other girl. I looked at her for a long time. She had dark eyes and a gap between her front teeth, and she was laughing at something outside the frame. She was laughing in the way of someone who laughed easily and often. She was wearing a yellow t-shirt. I looked at her, and I remembered her. Not as a complete memory, not as a narrative, a sensation, the feeling of being beside her, the specific frequency of her laugh, the way she said my name, the warmth of a friendship that had been the central fact of my 9-year-old life. And then she had been gone, and the family had not known how to speak about it. My mother had removed the photographs because looking at them was too painful. My father had changed the subject when Lena's name came up. Rakia had been 11 and had followed the adult lead. If we did not say it, it did not need to be felt. Over 27 years, the name had gone underground. The grief had gone with it. But something in me had never stopped looking. I want to pause here, because lying in a hospital bed, holding a photograph of a girl I had loved at 9 years old and had lost, and then lost again in a different way to the silence that covered the first loss, is the moment this story became something I had not expected when I woke up on a Thursday morning. If you have ever carried a grief you did not have language for, drop a comment below, and subscribe right now, because what I did in the months after I left that hospital and what I found when I went looking for Lena properly is the part that changed me.
Dr. Joyce Ampah, a consultant neuropsychologist. She had been part of my medical team during the admission and had asked to speak with me when the nurse's report about Lena had been added to my file. She sat across from me in my hospital room on Friday morning, and she explained what she understood about what had happened in a way that was clear and honest and did not overclaim. She said, "The unconscious mind operates differently from the conscious one." She said that grief, which has been suppressed, not processed, not spoken, not given its proper time and space, does not disappear. It goes to a different place, a place the conscious mind does not have routine access to, but that place is still part of the self. It still operates. It still holds what it has been given to hold. She said, 5 days of unconsciousness removed the conscious mind's management of what you carry. What came through was what was already there. It had been there for 27 years. You had simply not had access to it. She said, "The name Lena is not random. It is the thing that has been waiting the longest." She recommended I work with a grief therapist, not because something was wrong with me, because something had been waiting a very long time to be right. Mrs. Georgina Sey, Lena's mother. Rakia found her through a mutual contact from our childhood neighborhood. She was 71 years old. She had moved twice since the accident, but had not moved far. She was living 30 minutes from the street where Lena and I had grown up. I wrote her a letter. Not an email. A letter. Handwritten. 3 pages. I told her who I was. I told her about the hospital and the 5 days and the name that had come through the unconsciousness like something that had been waiting for the right conditions to surface. I told her that I did not know what I was asking for by writing. I told her I had been 9 years old and I had loved her daughter, and then spent 27 years not knowing that I was still grieving her. She replied within a week. Her letter was 2 pages. Her handwriting was large and careful. She said she remembered me. She said Lena had talked about me constantly. She said she had always hoped that Lena's friends had carried something of her with them, and that knowing I had, even without knowing it, was something she was going to sit with for a long time. She said she would very much like to meet. We met on a Saturday morning in October, a cafe, 30 minutes from the street where Lena and I had grown up. Mrs. Seeley was a small woman with dark eyes and a careful smile. She had brought a photograph album.
We sat for 3 hours. She showed me photographs I had not known existed. Lena at 6, at 7, at 8. Lena at 9, the summer of the accident, the last summer, in a yellow t-shirt that I recognized from the photograph Rakia had found in the attic box. I showed her the photograph Rakia had found. She looked at it for a long time. She said she loved that garden. She would have stayed in it all day if we let her. I said, I remember. 2 words. The first time I had said them about Lena in 27 years. The grief therapist. Dr. Joyce Ampah had referred me to a colleague. I will not name her here because that work is mine and private, but I will tell you the shape of what that work was. It was not dramatic. It did not involve a breakthrough moment or a revelation that unlocked everything at once. It was slow, and it was incremental, and it was the kind of work that happens in small rooms with low voices and long silences. It was learning to give a name its proper weight. Lena. Not a name from nowhere, not a mystery from an unconscious state. A girl, a best friend, a gap-toothed laugh and a yellow t-shirt, and a summer that ended before it should have. A loss that was real when it happened, and had not been less real for being unspoken. The therapy gave the loss its proper size, which turned out to be very large, which was right, because she had been very important.
Rakia. I want to say something about my sister before this story ends. She had been 11 when Lena died. She had followed the adult pattern, the silence, the removed photographs, the changed subjects. She had not known she was doing anything wrong. She had been a child, following the cues of the adults around her. But she had remembered. She had kept the name in her own way, quietly, without saying it, in the part of herself that knew the silence was a kind of holding, not a letting go. When I woke up and the nurse told her what I had been asking for before she came in to see me, alone in the corridor, she had cried. She told me this 4 months after I left the hospital. She said, I cried because you found her, even when you didn't know you were looking. I said, I didn't find her, she found me. Rakia said, that's the same thing. She was right. The photograph is on my desk now, not in a box in an attic, not in a plastic sleeve, on my desk where I work every day. 2 girls, 9 years old, standing in a garden, one of them laughing at something outside the frame. I know what she was laughing at now. Mrs. Seeley told me. It was a dog that had run through the garden belonging to the neighbors. Lena had found it the funniest thing that had happened all summer. I look at the photograph and I think about a dog running through a garden in the summer of 1997 and a girl laughing like it was the funniest thing that had ever happened. And I think about 5 days of unconsciousness and a name that came through like something that had been waiting for the door to open. Lena. I know her now. I know her properly. 27 years late, but I know her.
Here is what 5 days and a name I did not know I knew taught me. Grief does not go away when we stop speaking it. It goes underground. It waits. It does not mind waiting. It has all the time you have. It will be there at 9 years old and at 36 and at every age in between, held in the part of you that does not forget even when the conscious mind has been instructed to move on. Speak the names. Not because speaking them brings people back, they do not come back, but because the grief of their absence is real, and it deserves to be real, and it does not do well underground. It does better in the light, with a photograph on a desk and a woman in her 70s who remembers a dog running through a garden in 1997 and a girl who laughed like it was everything. Speak the names. Drop a comment and tell me your story. I read every single one. And subscribe. I am here every week with a new story. She had been looking for her for 27 years without knowing it. 5 days unconscious, and she finally found the way back.